So, this is a bit of a weird setting. Hello. If you can hear me, just lift your hand that I get a feeling. This is fantastic. Thank you very much. Are you well? Say yes. Yes. Good. Fantastic. That's the spirit I like. So, this is a first for me on a stage like this. Kind of a bit weird, but should be fun. Silent stage is probably a bit against what I do. So, topic today is entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what I'd like to be talking about, where bullshit meets reality. Just out of interest, who of you is a founder? Raise your hand. Who's founded a company? That's quite good. Who would like to found a company? Okay, who has no fucking clue why they're here? Well, that's a good one. That's honest. That's fantastic. So, I'm Daniel, and I'd like to talk about this topic the next couple minutes. Who of you is easily offended? No one? Fantastic. That's good because I have a tendency to being offensive once in a while. So I'm half Irish, half German, which is a bit of a weird mix, I have to admit. A TV presenter whom I like a lot, a guy called Jeremy Clarkson, once said, if you're half Irish, half German, it means you want to be brutally efficient tomorrow. So that's a bit of a story of my life. It gets even more complicated. I went to school in Portugal. I have a Colombian fiancé, an American Cocker Spaniel who's from Slovenia, and I've been in Austria for about 21 years, so I'm from just about anywhere and nowhere, which is a good thing. I like it. Yeah. Up to now, I've founded 6 companies, which is quite a lot, and maybe a bit of my background. Initially, this is confusing. This is easier for me. Initially, I went to business school, and I liked it quite a lot, so I stayed there for 20 semesters because business school was quite good. I liked it a lot, and at the same time, I went to acting school, which at this point, again, made absolutely no sense. I remember a lot of people saying, oh my goodness, why are you doing that? Do something real, go work for a bank, which at that point was like the most horrifying idea ever. It sounded for me like, go smack a hammer on your testicles, which I don't think is a pleasant thing. So anyhow, I did that, and at that point, I always liked doing things, but I didn't know how and didn't know what, and I was about to write my thesis, and I wanted to write about TV advertising. And then my phone broke. And by coincidence, by pure coincidence, I bought a new phone. And it happened to be an iPhone, which was quite cool. And suddenly I decided, fuck that, no TV. I'll write my thesis on mobile marketing. And I was one of the first. And I had a large study, and I had about 750 people participate. And one of the people that participated were from a company called i5 Invest, which is a company builder. And back then I had no fucking clue what a company builder was. But they said they wanted to talk to me, and I was like, okay, cool, let's do that. So I had a chat with them, and the idea was they wanted to create a mobile agency while somehow transferring the knowledge of a young up-and-coming startup who no one really gave much of a chance from the area of Linz. And their name was called Runtastic, and I hadn't heard of them at that point. It's quite funny because there were so many experts who said, look boys, you're from Linz, and your main competitor is Nike, and I mean, look at you. Give up, leave it. And that was quite interesting. So together we founded a first mobile agency. That was the first company I founded. And that was my deep dive into this whole entrepreneurial scene. And suddenly I had the feeling, this is where I belong to. This is fantastic. At the same time, in the neighboring office, there were 2 guys, and they always did startup events. Well, startup events. I didn't know what a startup was at that point, and the events were more like 20, 30 people meeting for after-work beers. But then the idea came, let's make an event, and they invited me to host because they said, look, you can speak English, you're a trained actor, might as well do it. And I was like, no, okay. And there were 34 people. That was quite cool. And they said, that was good, let's do that again. I was, okay, but it's going to be bigger. I was like, yeah, sure. And in my mind, bigger than 34 meant 40. Potentially 50. And I'll never ever forget the moment where I walk on that stage and I'm still concentrated doing what I do, and I walk on stage, turn to the left and go, oh fuck. Because it was actually 850 people, which was up to today the largest amount I'd ever seen. I've spoken in front of a lot more people, but that was scary as shit. And after that, that was like my deep dive into this whole startup ecosystem. I kind of liked it, but I had the feeling, with a couple other entrepreneurs, there was no such thing as someone who was supporting the whole startup scene, someone who was giving the startup scene a voice. So I sat down with a couple other people, and we decided to found AustrianStartups. Who of you knows AustrianStartups? Raise your hand. Good. Who of you has a mobile phone? Good. So the thing is, within the next half an hour, like AustrianStartups, because it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. It's going to cure just about any disease you have. No, jokes aside. What it does, it's become the common voice of the startup ecosystem. We're non-profit, we're non-political, and we just try and help people who are interested in somehow changing the world. So that's the first company or the second thing I co-founded. Fast forward to now, as I said, it's 6. The latest has been the Vienna Mentoring Group, where we support early stage startups. The next funny thing was, and the number I'd like to talk about is 4. As I said, I spent 20 semesters in university. Actually, I was fucking hopeless. I was also the kid in school where everyone was like, yeah, you suck. And yeah, the funny thing is up to now, and I find it absolutely fucking hilarious, somehow universities approached me afterwards and said, well, you spent so long here, probably know how it all works, don't you want to lecture? So I lectured for university up to today, and every single time I go to universities, which I'll be doing again tomorrow, I just somehow chuckle. Because I remember being in school and people saying, look, life's going to be tough. And they were kind of preparing me to sleep under a bridge, I had the feeling. So nowadays I lecture at a bunch of universities, that's those. And the next number I'd like to talk about, which I also find up to date quite intriguing, is this. I have a thing for startups, and I have a thing for startup events. And up to today, I've hosted a bit of, probably more than 120, potentially 150 startup events. I like this topic. I breathe it, and I enjoy it. And then there's one more topic, and I'll get to the actual thing. But this is important to know who I am and why I want to talk about this topic so much, and why I also call it entrepreneurial spirit, where reality meets bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit happening. The next topic I want to mention is I hate it when I see amazing ideas with amazing people who just cannot communicate it. And that was the next thing that happened to me. I had various startups say, look, you stand on stage, you're a marketer, how can I help people like my idea? And something I've done, I love working on pitches, and that's why people also refer to me as the pitch professor. I enjoy it. By the way, my dear Austrian fans, I know there's regions in Austria where a lot of you confuse P's and B's. This title becomes very, very weird if you don't precisely take care of the P, because it sounds really weird. It was somewhere like half a year ago, I don't know where it was, and I was announced on stage, and the next person is the bitch professor, and you're like, and someone says, he saw more than 4,500 bitches in the last 7 years, and you go like, what? And you walk on stage and go like, I hope you want to learn about pitching, right? And they go like, yeah, and you go like, oh, hallelujah, thank you so much. So the pitch professor, that's the next thing. And I have a heart for startups. I love startups. But I like startups because the thing with startups is, for me, it's just a bunch of people that decided, hey, let's do something, and no one ever told them why it wouldn't work. So I enjoy it. The thing is, though, so many people talk about startups nowadays. But the big question is, well, what is a startup? So many companies say, let's do something with startups. And you're like, so what is a startup? And they go like, do something. So I'd like to take a look at what actually a startup is. So here goes. For me, the most important thing is a startup is not a smaller version of a big company. It's not the whole thing like in small. It's something different, something completely different. And again, this is important to understand how we work, how we operate, and how we think. An established company knows a couple of things. They know their business model, they know their customers, they know their market, they know their mechanisms. Long story short, it's all about executing. If you're in a big company, innovation means being 3% lighter, 2% quicker, 3% greener, whatever, that's all okay. And those are massive innovative steps. But that's not what we do. We do something else. A startup is, for me, like a small plant. It's very fresh, it's very young, but it can also be harmed very easily. Startups are based on hypotheses. That's the word I can never pronounce. But basically, it's a complicated word for saying, I think this will work. And those of you with a background in academia know these things can work or not. This is absolutely important. If you engage in startup topics, this is the single most important thing to understand how we operate. We try and validate them. This is why we do what we do. This is why we're so quick and so aggressive. Obviously, we all search for a business model, meaning, well, how do we earn money with what we've got? For me also, innovation or entrepreneurship means taking an innovation and transforming it into a commercially viable good. There's always the question, how much is an idea worth? Well, to be blunt and to say it in Dublin language, well, fuck all. Nothing. An idea, well, congratulations, I have 20 ideas a day. If you know how to transform this idea into commercially viable good, now we're talking. And this is the real challenge for me. There's something so many people forget. So it's all about searching for a business model, and then startups focus on growth. It's all about growing quickly. I know a lot of you know this, but it's important information for me to somehow tackle this topic. Obviously, the next thing you try and get is product market fit. Having the right product for the right market. And here's something interesting. This is an area where a lot of people fuck up. They confuse product market fit with problem market fit. Always, if in that area, think about it. Now, the funny thing is, getting back to my story was, so I was invited by these people. We went to found the first company, and I have a background in marketing and market research, meaning I was taught to be super, super, super precise. Like the third digit after the dot, discussing for long times, well, is it 0.4, is it 0.5? And someone says, well, we're not sure. And suddenly I'm there, and these guys tell me, well, let's get going. And I'm like, okay, let's start. Who's the customer? And they go like, we don't know. And I go like, what do you mean you don't know? You're like, yeah, we don't know. And we're like, okay, awesome. What we'll do is, let's do some market research. That's where it come from. They were like, yeah, awesome. How much is it? And I was like, I don't know. And I said some number, a couple thousand euros, and they were like, yeah, we haven't got that. And I was like, you don't know your customer, but you have no money to find out. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck. And the next thing was they told me, by the way, we have to be quick. And at that point in my career, well, it wasn't a career at that point in my life, I thought I just encountered a bunch of absolute fucking lunatics because they had no clue of the market, no money to find out, and no time. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's absolutely lovely. And then I kind of learned the most important part for me, what the whole thing is all about. And this is this. It's all about building whatever you want to do, measuring the effect, and learning. Build, measure, learn is our mantra, meaning be so as quick as possible. Understand what your consumer does. Don't spend 6 months in some shitty box thinking, oh, could it work or could it not work? Find it out. If I want to find out, can I sell this bottle for €5, I could either go to a marketing research agency, spend tens of thousands of euros and have them, well, validate that with blah, blah, blah. Or I can just say, who of you is going to pay me €5 for this? Raise your hand. No one. That's what I thought. Took me 5 seconds, cost me 0. Okay, hypothesis done. Didn't work. Fine, let's move on. And that's the thing. You build it as quickly as you can, you measure it, and then you learn from it. The funniest thing is someone once said, if after 6 months you're not embarrassed of the first product you've launched, you were too slow. I heard that was like, really? In hindsight, hell yes. You always have to be embarrassed. I mean, if you're not quick enough, But let's be honest, with the whole startup thing. Next number, 90% of startups fall flat on their face. That's the reality for me. Startup is high risk. Anything innovative is high risk. If you understand that as well, you know what we're coming from. All of this is absolutely important. If you meet people that say, startup, piece of cake, easy, tell them to go fuck themselves. If people say, invest in startups, it's a good way to put your money, no. 90% fail. Some people might say 80, but I think it's the best to work with 90. That's the reality. But again, that's not a bad thing. If you think about it, the whole thing is based on a hypothesis. So therefore, it's okay to understand why it doesn't work. But there's one thing that is important. And I'll mention that in a second. Mark Zuckerberg also said this, move fast and break things. If you think about it, what does he mean with that? It doesn't mean drive 180 miles an hour and crash cars, but it means be aggressive enough to try and find out things that don't work. If you're worried to break something, you're not aggressive enough, you're not quick enough. Well, then probably some people are going to say, yeah, that's this new startup-y bullshitty stuff. No. Edison once said, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. I love that. Let's be blunt. If this whole thing will go up in fire, and someone says, do you know where the emergency is? And I'll say, no, but I've tried that way, that's locked. Technically, that would be failure, because I've found out this way doesn't work. But for all of you to say, hey, don't go down that way because it's locked, that's quite good information. Well, it's still going to suck that everything's on fire, but still you found out that something did not work. And I mentioned speed, but I always have to have at least one quote from the racing driver because I like motorsports. I like this a lot. And Mario Andretti once said, if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. And that's right in a way. It's okay. By the way, if you do this, and you feel worried and you feel scared, that's okay. Because that's important. I think also fear is an important factor here, because if you're not scared of these things, you're an absolute fucking lunatic, because everyone's scared of the unknown. But the trick is, can you overcome that step? Now, I'd like to talk about fail culture, and I've already kind of built up to this. And to be honest, when I hear this fail culture, this word alone is absolute fucking bullshit for me. So often I see people who say, oh, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to have failed. What the fuck? These people know jack shit. No one wants to fail. Failing sucks. So many people say, it's so important to give room for this. No. That's shit. They have not understood what we're about. What we are about is a culture of perseverance. There's a big difference. With that I mean, no one wants to fail. No one wants to fall flat on their face. But if you persevere, that means that you're willing to get up. That's what we're about. We're a culture of perseverance. Fail culture sounds for me like being mediocre, not being informed, being shit, hurting people intentionally. A culture of perseverance means no one will stop me. So please, if you talk to people about this fail culture thing, when people say, oh, a good entrepreneur has failed at least 2 times, fuck no. He or she may have gotten up twice, but the failing thing is easy. Any idiot can fail. But only people with true perseverance, they're the ones that get up. Now obviously if I talk about startups, I'll always have to quote at least Steve Jobs once. And he said, I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful is pure perseverance. That's the word I like. It's positive. It shows us what we want. Look at this guy. Most of you, probably as Austrians, you've all been here, right? You've all seen these types. I have to admit, when I moved here when I was aged 15, being half Irish, half German, and the highest mountain I'd ever seen was about that high. So I had to learn skiing at the age of 15, and it was super fucking scary. And everywhere there were these small kids, this size, big yellow helmet, and just going smack bang flat out. They were fantastic. Now, imagine on the first day, you take your kids skiing and you say, you know what? Here's your skis. Enjoy yourself. Go for it. But whatever you do, don't fall down. If you fall, I'm going to take these skis away from you. I'm never, ever going to let you ski. What's the kid's going to go? Kid's going to go like, and then you go, no, 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 go on, then enjoy yourself. The kid is going to continuously fall on its face. This is the whole thing. That's how we learn. Probably at the back, kid top left corner is about to fall flat on his face the first time. And I think the thing is, he will probably fall flat on his face 50 times that day, at least. He'll spend most of the time on his bum in the snow. But that's okay, as long as he gets up 51 times. Now, meet Herman. Probably you all know this guy. And I moved here in 1996. And in 1998, there were the Olympics. And I think all of Austria was awake. We all watched him. So he comes down the slope, and the camera cuts, and suddenly in the top right corner we see him, and suddenly air comes on, and you see him just falling like a rocket ship through the whole screen. And I think everyone in Austria was like, oh! And we saw him like impact like a fucking bomb. and we thought he was dead. But the thing is, 3 seconds later, he gets up. He gets up. What does he do? The fucker smiles. He sticks his tongue out and he smiles. And you go like, how the fuck did he survive this? Now the thing is for me, the crash, why did he crash? Because he was an idiot? Because he was ill-prepared? No. Because he had to go to the limit and beyond in order to win. The crash happened because he was prepared to take that risk. Now the thing is, if you'd put me into a cannon and shoot me at the same speed as him, I'd be dead. He survived because he was well prepared. He'd prepared his body for this. He got up because of the willpower. He knew why he was doing this. And the most interesting part about good old Herman is, 3 days later, he was nuts enough to race again and to win. Think about that. How would you feel after going head down, head first, at 100 and whatever miles an hour? Your body is bruised from tip to toe. You can hardly imagine the pain he has. Every one of us, I would say, will go like, ah, fuck, I was so lucky, I'm not doing this again. Herman goes, fuck yeah, I'm doing this. Holy shit, and he wins fucking Olympia? This is what I mean was a culture of perseverance. He won it because he had to do it. He needed to win this. And there was nothing and no one stopping him. Think of Niki Lauda. This is, by the way, Saturday, 31st of July, 1976. First man ever to go under 7 minutes on the Nordschleife. Next day it is crash. 6 weeks later he's in Monza racing again. We have this culture. We have it everywhere. Look at sports, we love these people. But for some silly reason, in entrepreneurship we don't like this. I don't get it. I think it's down to the words. Please, when you hear fail culture and this rubbish, tell them bullshit. This is not what we want. Now, I've already mentioned this. The whole thing is about having the passion. If you have the passion for whatever you do, you will succeed. Steve Jobs said so beautifully, unless you have a lot of passion about this, you're not going to survive. You're going to give up. So again, check this topic. Do I have the passion to do what I do? If you have it, you're onto something. Now I want to talk spirit. This is so important for me to talk about this, that you understand what am I on about. What do we do to understand it beyond the bullshit? Now for me, the first thing is obviously when I talk spirit, is this. I have to think about this. Spirit means for me drink. And that's something else. Really important rule, whatever you do, do not ever mix Jameson with Coca-Cola, because Irish people cry if you do that. Don't ever do that. But okay, that's something else. I want to talk about entrepreneurial spirit. And for me, the essence, the absolute essence of entrepreneurial spirit, and there's so many workshops you can do. Go to Silicon Valley for a week, learn entrepreneurial spirit. Read a book, stand on your leg and put your finger in your nose, you'll be a true entrepreneur. I can't stand this rubbish. That's bullshit. The essence of entrepreneurial spirit for me is getting shit done. This is what we're on about, getting shit done no matter how unpleasant it is. This is true entrepreneurial spirit. If it hurts, you continue. If everyone's going to tell you this will not work, you continue. If people say this has never been done before, you go like, yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it? If people say, I cannot imagine this working, you say, well, I can, that's why I'm doing it. Fuck you. This is an important factor. Entrepreneurial spirit is about getting shit done. Look at this. Entrepreneurial spirit is for me also about seeing the storm, seeing the thing you're about to enter. Most people would see the storm and go like, oh shit, this is going to suck. Let's turn. Let's not go down there. Entrepreneurial spirit is about going, it's going to get tough, but that's why I'm here. This is what I want. Bring it on. Because the fun part starts once you enter the storm. I want to talk about reality versus lifestyle in this whole startup topic. Now, obviously, if you think of startup entrepreneur, you'll probably think of a guy looking like me, right? Beard, black glasses, probably you'll find me in a co-working space with my MacBook drinking a Frappuccino. Well, to be honest, true, yes. But let's have a look at startup reality versus lifestyle. Now, is in a way, when you think of startup, besides people looking like me, you'll think of that guy. Now, very often when you read about the whole startup thing, this is how it's usually conveyed. So you put on your thinking cap, idea, super important. Have the right idea, idea is everything. Once you have it, you come up with your solution, easy. As soon as you have the solution, you write your business plan, because hey, we always like business plans. Ideally 50 pages, a business plan below 50 pages, not important. And once you've done that, obviously please don't waste your time on business plans, that was a joke. Now, once you've done the business plan, you start coding, very important. By the way, a recent study said if you put on your hoodie while coding, you're 22% more awesome. Really important. To speed up things, you grab a Red Bull, because, well, coding without hoodie and Red Bull's not gonna work. Honest, I think it's a good drink, but still, this is what happens. And then probably once you're done coding, potentially before you're done coding, a venture capitalist phones up and says, hello, you seem amazing, let me give you a lot of money to live your dream. Always happens, true story. And then Google says, we heard what you're doing, you're amazing, would you care for $1 billion? And you go, no. 3, yeah. And then you buy this. Now, so often you read of these overnight success stories. Please, please don't believe that. If you think Angry Birds, who of you played Angry Birds? Raise your hand. Did I get a feeling? Okay, we're all guilty. Overnight success. It was the 51st app Rovio released. They had 50 apps that sucked. That was number 51. If you think of Runtastic, overnight success, it's not. But for me, the most important thing is, if you're after this, then please get an easy job. Don't become an entrepreneur. If this is your motivation, don't become an entrepreneur. It's about something else. Now, yes, I had to have this picture because I liked it. If people tell you this story I just did, this is the massive bullshit indicator that should go bing. Because, let's be honest, it's never that easy. I have never, ever met an overnight success. Never. I've seen close to 5,000 pitches up to now, done 120 startup festivals. No one has ever been an overnight success. They might talk about it that way, because in hindsight, the stuff that sucks is something you tend to forget. Think about school. Most people say, oh, school was awesome. I think it was shit, but still, they think school was awesome. If you'd ask them while in school, they're going to say, worst time ever. The guys here that went to the army, 10 years later, they say, it was fun. Ask them while they're in the army, worst thing ever. So please always understand the essence of this whole overnight success thing. This is the way a real startup kind of works. I quite like it. At the top left, you have the idea. Let's do this. Let's change the world. It's going to be super cool. And then you kind of launch the product. You tell people about it. You shoot it into the market. And then what happens? The lowest point here is the first time you notice you have no fucking clue what you're doing. And I have to admit, for me, 6 weeks after we launched the first company, I was on a train about to pitch our idea to this large company, big-ass company. And I'm on the train going like, this is going to be awesome. And suddenly, my inner voice goes and says, have you thought of this? I go, like, no. And this, and this, and this, and this. And it kept continuing. I was like, oh my goodness. So I pitched it, and I got shredded to fucking pieces. That was the moment where I noticed I have no clue. But the thing is, that's okay. And then you start trying it, and trying it again, and trying it again, something we call iterate. And then bit by bit, you start understanding, do I like it? But the thing is, most people, once they've fallen flat on their face, go like, doesn't work. And think about sports. When was the last time you tried a sport out for the first time and decided after a minute, doesn't work, can't do it, I'm not good at it straight away, sucks, let's do it. Now the thing is though, I want to talk about risk. It is a very risky thing. Very, very risky doing this. But that's okay. Look at this. Very often, people think that risk and the willingness to fail are pretty much the same thing. I spoke about good old Herman. I mentioned Niki Lauda. I'd like to take another analogy to show what we mean with risk and the willingness to fail. I'll say it in this word. With this, we do not mean that we think it's awesome to crash. We don't want that. But show me one race car driver, one downhill skier who's not prepared to accept the risk of crashing. But the thing is, none of them want to crash. There's a big difference. Imagine you would go to a young guy who's about to start his career in Formula One, and you tell him, do you know what? To be a really good racer, you need to crash at least 2 times. That's the moment where he's going to hurt himself. That's the moment where he's going to get killed. But understand that when you want to go fast, if you want to change things, you want to do things for the first time, you're going to be better than the others, you will always have to accept the risk of potentially crashing. And you have to have a team and have to have a surrounding that say, okay, if you go flat out, and if you crash, that's okay. But it doesn't mean not doing your homework, not knowing the circuit, and suddenly going, oh, I thought there was a corner, and you crash. That's not what we want. But the thing is, genuine risk leads to genuine innovation. Only this. Fortune favors the brave, right? Fortune favors the bold. Those are the ones. You have to do that. Now, obviously, at this point in time, a lot of people are going to say, well, why would I do this? Why would I go into this? That's a good question. Why? And for me, it's a question I hear very often. People say, well, why? Why are people dumb enough to do this? Why are people willing to take 90% risk? Why are they willing to do something no one's done before with so little chance of actually getting something? But the thing is, it's all about the why. It always is. At this point, you'll be asking yourself, if you are the ones who's going into the storm, oh shit, why am I doing this? But the thing is, I think you always need to start with the why. There's a great model, it's called The Golden Circle, by a guy called Simon Sinek. And if there's one book I'd like to advise you on reading, or one TED Talk if you have so little time to read books, to listen, and it's called Start with the Why. And he shows this beautiful golden circle. For me, it's the absolute essence of marketing, it's the essence of company building, and it's the essence of changing just about anything. You always start with the why, and the why leads to the motivation. Why am I doing this? When I meet young startups for the first time, I always have 3 questions. Number 1 is, well, what do you do? And that's the easy part. But number 2 is, why can you do it? And this is so interesting. When people say, I can do this because I have X MBAs and I want to be rich, I'm not interested. But if they tell me I'm doing this because I've been working on this for 8 years, it's something that's been bugging me day and night, I just have to do this. I can't code, and I don't know this, and I don't know that, but I don't care. I'm going to change this. This is the most important thing. If you have this, everything else follows. So whatever you undergo, being it in a corporation, or being it in a startup, or being it fucking whatever, always start with that. Once the motivation is right, you'll succeed. Herman won his gold because he knew he had to do it. He was intrinsically motivated, to say the complicated word. Intrinsically motivated people can never, ever be stopped. They find out, okay, this system doesn't work, whatever. They'll come back 2 years later and say, look, we worked on this, we finally got it. People who have an extrinsic motivation, i.e. money, getting big cars, blah, 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 they'll say, So start with the why. The why leads to the motivation. The how, that's what follows. That's the process, and in consequence, the product. That's the simple stuff, but so often, especially large companies, always start with the product. Let's build a computer that's blah, blah, blah quicker. You say, well, why? And they go like, why not? And that sucks. Always start with that. Entrepreneurial spirit, to get back to the talk. Entrepreneurial spirit is for me the result of the why. If you have this why sorted, then the spirit comes. If you have the why, everyone in your team is going to follow you. If you have the why, you will get up in the morning, tired, having slept 3 hours, and understand why are you getting up. The why, for me, is the most important thing to find. Don't look for universities, don't look for jobs, don't look for the next book to read. Find your why. And it sounds so, I don't know, it sounds like I'm some I don't know, guru or whatever, but that's not what I mean. If you understand why you do stuff, it works. If your team understands why things are done, they'll follow you. If your customers understand why you do things, they'll support you. But without that, it's going to suck. With this why, you'll have what it takes. And to end, I'm convinced that entrepreneurial spirit cannot be taught. You can learn the tools to foster innovation. You can learn the tools to become quicker. All of that is great. But think of it. You can only use them in the right way if you understand what your why is. And this why can and has to be discovered. In that sense, it's a pleasure talking to you in this somewhat abstract way on a silent stage, which is fun, reading your emotions in the face and not hearing anything. The why for me is something you'll have to find. And I'd like to end on this sentence, and it seems so cheesy, but if you can dream it, you can do it. And for me, we've all heard this sentence, but think about it. How many of you drew a small cartoon on a napkin? Probably most of you when you were children. You know people who've somehow made small doodles and God knows what. But the thing for me about Walt Disney is, he was one of hundreds of thousands of people. But out of this small drawing, he grew this tremendously kick-ass huge empire. And that's why I think it's so important to understand that entrepreneurship is a way of transforming innovation into an economically viable good. But you only do this, you only go through this whole valley of pain and valley of insecurity and all these other unpleasant factors if you know why the fuck am I doing this. In that sense, if you're interested in this whole startup team topic, if you're interested in following these things, if you're interested in maybe engaging yourself, if you're about to found a company or know people, give them my contact details, maybe follow Austrian Startups. But the most important thing is for me, is if you have an idea you're working on, if there's something you have to do, nothing and no one can and will ever stop you. Unless you. Which you won't if you know why the fuck am I doing this. In that sense, thank you very much for observing and listening. Take care. Bye-bye.